As he said, I'm Kassian Wren, and I'm here to talk about notebooks. So a little bit about me. I am an open source technology evangelist, which is a fancy way of saying dev advocate at NetApp Instacluster. I am newish to OpenSearch. I pivoted from working on Apache Cassandra stuff to OpenSearch recently. I use they, them pronouns. You can ask me about that later if you want. And I have 3 adorable cats. 2 of them are pictured. Apollo is on the bottom and Asterion is on the top. Apollo and Asterion have a matching set of eyes between them. They are my boys. Anyway, so let's talk more about what are OpenSearch notebooks? What are we trying to achieve? What solutions? Problems are we trying to solve? We'll talk about how notebooks work a little bit. We'll talk about, we'll do a demo. I created a notebook from baseball data, historical baseball data going all the way back to the 1800s to last year. And we'll go through that a little bit. And then we'll talk about how to communicate, learn, and explore with notebooks, how to really kind of create new visualizations, create new fields, create new, learn how to create your indexes, things like that through notebooks. And then we'll talk a little bit about when and why you would use notebooks. And finally, I'll talk about what I really like about notebooks and what I might change about notebooks. So what are OpenSearch notebooks? What's under that little tab? They've been on OpenSearch dashboard since OpenSearch 1.2. They allow users to combine code snippets, visualizations, and narrative text in one place. You can use pipe processing language or SQL to create queries against your data, and you can include OpenSearch visualizations that you have already created for your dashboards, or you can create new visualizations just for your notebooks. So this is an example of a notebook. You can see the markdown and the visualization there, and yeah. So how these work. So first, you create paragraphs. Paragraphs are either Markdown, SQL, PPL, or a visualization. And you just create these paragraphs and run each of them separately. So each one is a query, each one is a piece of Markdown, each one is and so you can run them separately. And then you have, at the result, is an interactive place to manipulate and share your data from your OpenSearch dashboards, from your OpenSearch data. You can also generate PDF and PNG reports, which are really handy for distributing data to people who don't have access to the OpenSearch dashboard or don't want access to an OpenSearch dashboard. Yeah. So let's go into the demo. So what I did here is I created this notebook. And let me make this bigger, actually. Not quite that big. There we go. OK. So what we've got here is actually, let me show you the data before I show you the. OK. So what we've got is called the Lawman database. And so the Lawman database is an open source database of all baseball data from the 1800s to the previous year. MLB has some very strong legal restrictions on this year's data, so I'm using last year's and before data. Plus, I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan, so last year was pretty sweet. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty sweet. Anyway, so we've got CSVs, and I have written a Node.js application to ingest them and put them in. I've also done a little bit of manipulation of the data. I'll talk about that as we go through the demo. The demo actually shaped the way I stored the data, and the way I stored the data shapes the demo. So they kind of interact with each other. And so here is my notebook. It has access to everything in my OpenSearch database. So it has access to, I've created a teams index, a salaries index, a batting index, and a players index. So there's going to be some joins as well. And yeah, so first up, we've got a query. And so I'll go in here and I'll edit it and show you. So the first line there is where you delineate what you're going to use, PPL, SQL, or Markdown. And then you just start writing your query. So for instance, I've got my source is batting. I've got my player fingerprint. So the way baseball stores data in batting is it's by player, team, stint, and year. And that's because baseball players get traded in the middle of the season sometimes. And so sometimes they'll be batting for one team and another. So I made a player fingerprint out of the player ID and the year so that I could grab all the batting data for that year without having to write a join or an extra query. So that's the player fingerprint. And then we've got name first, name last, year ID, team name. And so here's what we've got. We've got basically everybody's batting averages and their at-bats and hits. And you can sort just like you could on a dashboard. The only thing here, it's a little weird. When I search from high to low, it actually kind of doesn't do it correctly. Like if I go down here, it goes back to 0.3 after going 0.01. I'll file a issue. But we've got everybody's batting averages. So then I've got a markdown block. And these are super important. They sound kind of like just a throwaway thing, like, oh, markdown. Context is everything when you're sharing data, especially with people who are stakeholders or who have an investment in said data. Just presenting them with a bunch of tables and graphs isn't going to tell them the story you want to tell them, right? You have to add in that information, that context yourself. And so, for instance, batting averages for each year regardless of team. Takes batting records, sorted by player, year, team, and aggregates them using the fingerprint. And so here, we've got, so this one I've kind of filtered a little bit because when I set it to all batting records, the league batting average at its highest on the histogram was like 0.014. The average batting average is actually like a 0.2. So then I realized, oh, if you have less than 25 at-bats, you're probably an outlier. So cut out 25 or less or fewer at-bats. And so you can see the averages here are a little more, a little less like ones and zeros and more things you'd expect to see, 0.387s. And so now we get into salaries. Now, what's interesting about the salary data in the Laman database is it ends at about 2016. So we kind of only really have historical data there. But it's still interesting data, and it still shows some really interesting stuff. So what we've got here is we've got the actual salaries. So this is how I knew something was up. When I sorted by the highest salary and it was 20 million, I was like, I'm pretty sure Shohei Ohtani got like an extra zero on that. Yeah, so looked it up. Anyway, we've got all this data, and now, and someone could talk to me about this because for some reason, my visualizations stopped showing up in my notebook today as I was editing it. So I'm going to show you the visualizations. They belong in the notebook. Live demos, am I right? All right. Oh, well, that's fun. All right. So, there we go. So this is a visualization of cool. That's not supposed to happen. All right, let's try this one more time. Dashboards Manager, visualize. I have an index pattern. I have several index patterns. Okay. I think we got something here. All right, great. A refresh, it just works. Yeah. So, all right, we are going to change this date because nothing has happened in the last 15 minutes. I'm going to change it to January 1st, 1884. Yeah. Okay. So this is the average at bats and the average hits per season per league. So you've got to me, this is a testament to the durability of players as we ask more extreme things of them as time goes on. Because you see the number of at bats is slowly decreasing over time. And the number of hits is slowly decreasing with it, but it's decreasing proportionally. So I don't. There's that little dip at 2020. That was a 60-game season as opposed to a 160-game season. That's why it's so low. COVID did a number on all of us. So we've got that, and we've got the next visualization, which I'll show you And hopefully this one won't crash. Ah. Sorry, this is taking a bit. I'm running this locally just to make sure internet doesn't get in the way. Average salary. Now this probably won't surprise anybody, but when we run the salary information, okay. Actually, oh, right, 84. Oh, right, I can do this. Okay, so this is the salary data from 84 through 2016. No surprise there. In fact, this graph would be dwarfed by this year's data. I would need a logarithmic scale to show it because that $4.5 million contract, last year, Shohei Ohtani signed a $700 million contract. So that's a little bigger. But yeah, we've got some interesting data here. But the data isn't really the story. The story is what notebooks are doing to tell the story, right? So let's talk more about that. Oh, helps when I pay attention to that. I forgot I removed that. I thought I removed that slide. Anyway, how to communicate data with OpenSearch notebooks. This is really important because communicating data is how we keep the lights on. It's how we keep stakeholders invested. It's how we keep investors invested. It's how we keep anybody invested, is we have to tell a story with the data. We can't just turn on the fire hose and throw data at people. So one of the things I find most appealing about notebooks is the ability to add crucial context right into your data. You can have a data table next to a markdown, next to a visualization, and you can say, look, all of these things are related, and they're all in front of you, and here's how they're related. It's a really great way to kind of tell a story, create, or learn something, even. So yeah. You tell a story with the data instead of fire hosing parties, especially if they may not understand the details. It's really great in notebooks to kind of narrow down the number of fields and kind of lower the granularity of the information a bit. Create like a high-level view, and then you can create another notebook with a deep dive view. You know, it's a simple way to handle it. You can also pull stakeholders into your ideas with easy-to-read, easy-to-digest data. Now, granted, notebooks will not magically make your data easy to read or easy to digest. You still have to do that up yourself a little bit, but it gives you the tools to present the data once you've gotten it where you want it. So some examples of OpenSearch notebook ideas. If you're ingesting logs, incident reports, root cause analysis reports can be really handy, especially in a handy PDF or PNG for those who are not technical but need to know what's going on. You can build live infrastructure reports, which are very good for helping keep infrastructure management cost effective and for keeping effective status of your entire infrastructure. If you're ingesting analytics data, you can do timeline series reports, or you can convey important details to newer team members using a notebook. One of the biggest use cases I've seen for notebooks is documentation, not for outside developers, but for inside developers, new developers to, for instance, a giant database. A notebook saying, here's the tables you're interested in, here's the data, here's why we're building these things out, those kind of things. You can compare multiple timelines in one notebook, which is really useful for time series analysis of 2 different time series. And it makes sense in a notebook because, again, you can add that context as well, how these 2 charts are related. So how to explore and learn with OpenSearch notebooks. So creating and iterating on OpenSearch notebooks is very quick, meaning you can get to exploring your data and get to writing queries and get to putting visualizations together. And you can look at your data from more angles, tables, charts, graphs, etc., all in one place. Your reports can be interactive. There are some newer features, like an experimental feature to make the visualizations themselves actually like manipulatable and things. Really cool stuff going on in there. And with PPL, Markdown, and SQL, you can create code snippets in a safe area away from production code. You can isolate your notebook on a private tenant, so it's just yours. You can say public tenant, let my coworkers see it, or whatever. You can, manipulate data in a way that doesn't affect your production status. You can also play with new visualizations in a private setting, but access to real data. So instead of dummy data or randomly generated data, you can use your data in the notebooks instead. I find that really helpful. Dummy data almost never works for me when I'm trying to conceptualize a database. So yeah. So learning from OpenSearch notebooks. This is the thing that I found. A lot of this is from firsthand experience. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm kind of newish to OpenSearch, learning some things. And I learned a lot about does anybody else feel like designing an index is like a draw the owl problem? Do you remember the draw the owl problem where it's like 2 circles is step 1, and step 2 is like a fully drawn owl, and that's the tutorial? That's how I kind of felt designing indexes, just a little bit. But notebooks actually helped me out, because when I would come into a problem that notebooks couldn't solve, it was because my data needed to be in a different format, or I needed to look at the query a different way, or things like that. So learning from notebooks, not just by creating documentation, but by playing. A lot of how humans learn is through play. And so, actually getting in there and trying things. And so notebooks are great for that, because you have that safe environment where you can experiment and play. You won't break any integration tests, and you won't break any production code, and the dashboard won't die, things like that. And I learned PPL through notebooks. I had not dealt with PPL before, and I was like, all right, let's try it. And so visualization design as well. You can set up several visualizations next to each other, do kind of like your own little A/B testing. What tells you a better story, things like that. So some more notebook ideas. Documentation for how your data is collected, stored, and processed. This is really helpful for newer members of your team, or members of your team who just haven't dealt with a certain pipeline in a while. A sketchbook of visualization ideas. I actually have one of these on my own little private instance. I've loaded in a bunch of open API data, and I'm playing around with different visualizations and designing new things, and that is a way that you can also use them. So internal training documents. I always have like a really love-hate relationship with internal training documents, because they need to be living documents. They are never living documents, but they need to be. And I feel like the idea of a notebook puts it more towards living documentation standard than it does just a markdown file or dashboard or things like that. So, and a storybook for your data. If you are trying to pitch to investors, if you are trying to get people to contribute to your open source project, what story are you trying to tell with your data? The notebooks can help you tell it by allowing you to put that context and put that information all next to each other. So when and why you would use OpenSearch notebooks. When you and your team need to see something about the data in the cluster quickly and using a unified vocabulary, I find that the number one thing when you're problem solving with a team is creating a unified, established vocabulary, especially because of things like language barriers, time zones, making sure everyone's speaking the same language, and because notebooks are Markdown, PPL, and SQL, you've got those same languages. Just sharing notebooks between coworkers. Hey, I've got this idea. I tried this out. And then the coworker goes, oh, cool. I thought of a way to improve it. Type, type, type. Done. Collaboration and being able to explore data. So documenting your data, run books. Anytime a code interactive data-linked environment can help folks produce the next great idea. Sounds a little markety, but I believe in it. I truly believe that in web development in general, the less restrictive and the easier you make your technology to use, the more and better solutions will come from it. So that's just my thought, though. So this is what I really like about OpenSearch notebooks. I really love the concept. I really, really love the concept. Like, in case that hasn't gotten through, in my talk. The idea of a shareable way to play with and visualize data that's easy to create, yeah, sure, sign me up. Great. That's why I'm up here, right? I'm giving a talk about it for that exact reason. I like that it doesn't add yet another language to the pile. That's another thing I found entering OpenSearch is there's a lot of languages. There's a lot. I learned the joke about painless before I learned about OpenSearch. So I like that it just uses the same languages and the same technologies that you're already using in your dashboards, in your notebooks. Centralization of features is always really handy. It's always really handy to be able to centralize different views, different time scales, all sorts of things. Paragraphs, I love the concept of just a paragraph as a query or a markdown chunk. And you can move them, and you can run them separately. So when you edit your report, you don't have to rerun the whole thing. You just rerun 1 or 2 queries. And it is easy to export. I can actually show you that in a minute. I'll export a PDF of my baseball report, and it's pretty easy. Now here's what I'd change. Because don't get me wrong, I really like notebooks, but there are quite a few limitations to notebooks. Some of them are built into PPL. The limitations of PPL, things like you can't use group by when you're using a join, things like that. Complex SQL queries can also be limited. And my second thought is more of a suggestion, maybe. Maybe instead of building out a notebook solution of our own, maybe integrate one of the existing already standardized notebook systems, like maybe Jupyter, is just a thought. Mostly because it feels like a lot of excess work to recreate a notebook system when ones that are open source already exist. More collaboration and permanence. There's not a lot of emphasis on the collaborative part of notebooks. It's really just like, oh, create a notebook. Yay, you've created a notebook. And it's like, no, but now share your notebook. And then my last one, and this is just life in dev, error propagation. If I see another little window pop up on my notebook that says error, I'm going to scream. So, and it was really funny. I might actually file a pull request because when I get these errors, I would go into the console and there would be the real error in the console, and I just spit that out in the HTML. So that might be my first pull request to OpenSearch. Anyway, I'm going to actually show a couple more things that I skipped in the demo because I was nervous, as people get. Okay. So I'm actually going to write a query because I practiced this. All right. Another thing, this loading screen is kind of the first couple times I thought my notebook was gone. I was like, oh, God, all that work. So but I do really like this concept. I do really like, and I want to see it continue, and that's why I'm up here. So code block. We're going to start with a PPL command. And what we're going to do is we're going to search source salaries, and then put a pipe, and then we're going to say eval. We're going to say salary times 1.5. Right, needs to be the beginning. We're going to call this inflation salary. And it's going to equal salary times 1.5. Just going to leave it simple for now. And then we're going to say fields, player, ID, and then salary, and then year ID, team name, and inflation salary. We'll add that next to salary. Inflation salary. All right, sorry about the slow typing there, and run it. Okay, let's see. Oh, you know what? It helps when I comma delineate my comma delineated lists. There we go. That's probably what it's yelling about. See that little box in the bottom right? That's what I'm talking about. So what I'll do, actually, this is what I figured out. Run, right? And then go to network. And then this. Nope, it just errored. It does not have anything for me. Okay. All right. Well, let's see. Okay, I'm going to skip that for now. Just go to reporting. And like I said, it's really easy to download PDFs and PNGs. It just takes a second, and then the page reloads. Live demos, am I right? Oh, there it goes. OK, it just had to refresh. Great. So it's generating the PDF report. I'm going to let that run, and then I'm going to, yeah, OK, we're good. We're good on time. We're very good on time. Here we go. OK. So the things I would change about open source notebooks, like I said, I really like the concept, and I really want this to continue. I do feel like integrating with an existing notebook platform is going to be the way to go. Just ease of use. Also, the idea of pulling in data scientists to use open source notebooks, right? This is the concept that I kind of noodled about. And then we're like, oh, you know those Jupyter notebooks you love? Oh, we don't have those. We have these. So it's that kind of thing. But anyways, this is my first presentation in a while. I'm a bit nervous, and I feel like I rambled a bit, but I really appreciate your viewership. I really appreciate you being here. And I look forward to seeing what you can build with notebooks. Thank you very much.